The day I decided to break up with Jacob Young. There was a rainstorm. I had just gotten out of surgery, and he was walking beside me with an umbrella in his stride. He walked extremely fast and didn't even look back at me, letting me get soaked by the rain. I struggled with my heels stuck in the drain, but he nodded his wristwatch at me through the rain. And those Ferragamo loafers always nailed a few steps away from me. Remotely. I was suddenly weary. 3 years into the relationship, he had never waited for me while walking. It was always me watching his back and hurrying to catch up. The other day, I witnessed him and his first love walking with the intention of slowing down the pace. There is no excessive intimacy between the two, but extraordinarily close and warm. Perhaps in these 3 years, I have never been favored. Jacob Young doesn't know that running after someone is really tiring. So this time, I choose to let go. The insulated food container in my arms was a little cold when the late autumn wind hit me. I stayed where I was, unable to move a single step. In front of me, Jacob Young was walking side by side with a girl on the path of the hospitalization department. He was looking slightly sideways, a slim white lab coat, but it was hard to hide the attention he was getting from the crowd. I've seen that girl before, in Jacob Young's cell phone album. It was his first love, Sophia Zhou. At that time, he only explained lightly. We talked about it when we were in college, and then we broke up when she went abroad to study. The tone was calm, without any waves, and without the slightest emotion. But now, when he walked with her, his eyes rolled with emotion. There was no excessive intimacy between them, but they were extraordinarily close and warm. I do not know when Sophia Zhou returned to China. I don't want to find out what she said. Jacob Young's eyes have never dissipated. I only noticed that Jacob Young's pace was deliberately slowed down when he walked with her. Jacob Young was tall and his usual pace was fast. When I walked with him, he was always alone in front of me at a fast pace, not holding my hand and never waiting for me. At the moment, however, he noticed Sophia Zhou's face, slightly flushed from panting, deliberately adjusting his pace to a slow beat in the same frequency. He was waiting for her. A sharp pain in my chest. More than once in 3 years, I've protested, trying to get him to wait for me when he walks. He was always so cold, not caring about my feelings, not caring what I thought. But he always pinched his brow with a look of helplessness and impatience. Jane Young, will you stop being irrational? I don't love you if I walk fast. If you have to think that way, then I can't help it. Every argument ended with me thinking too much, and I believed his perfunctory explanations and fooled myself for 3 years. Now, Jacob Young's deliberate slowing down of every step is like a slap in my face. Perhaps, in 3 years of love, I have never been favored by him. Laughing, Sophia Zhou raises her hand to touch the watch on Jacob Young's hand. You still have it after all these years. The silver-colored watch glows with a cold light. Jacob Young never let me touch this watch, except for when he and I kissed in bed and were in love. He would carefully take it off and put it at the foot of the bed, and never left it alone. Now, Sophia Zhou was stroking the engravings on the inside of the band. I let out a long breath and looked up, trying desperately not to let the tears fall. Jacob Young's eyes finally noticed me. His face froze and he frowned at the insulated food container in my arms. Jane Young? What are you doing here? Inside the office, Jacob Young and I were the only 2 people. Sophia Zhou had long since been stood aside. This was his subconscious protection of Sophia Zhou. The window was open, and there was a passing wind. And after my eyes had soaked up the tears, the wind made them ache and hurt. After a short silence, he turned around and sighed. Yuan and I are coworkers now. Don't think too much about it. I was silent and didn't say anything. You asked for clam chowder. I'll leave if there's nothing else. Jacob Young's face went blank for a moment. What I want? Wasn't it the one you asked for by name last night? Last night. On a whim. He asked me if I could make a clam chowder. I didn't know what to think. But I found a video and learned how to make it. Jacob Young suddenly remembered and frowned. It was he one who wanted to drink it and asked me if I knew where to find a good clam chowder. I was just asking. He turned around and casually picked up the work records on his desk and flipped through them as if I wasn't there. He spoke carelessly. In the future, if there's nothing going on, you'll run to the hospital less often. A squeezing, stuffy feeling came from my heart, leaving me breathless. Suddenly, I didn't want to pretend anymore. Running to the hospital less often is to prevent me from disturbing your good deed with Sophia to rekindle an old flame? Like today? Jane Young. Jacob Young's brows condensed, and his hand stalled in the air as he flipped through the report. What's gotten into you? He grimaced and looked at me like I was a stranger. You can think what you want. But between me and Yuan, it's a clean slate. He has always had a sense of propriety and seldom gets angry. But now he lost his temper over Sophia Zhou. Under the stalemate, Sophia Zhou pushed in the door holding a stack of information. Year by year. Tomorrow surgery. She saw the tears stored in my eyes, pretending to apologize for not knowing what to do. Is it disturbing you? Seeing Sophia Zhou come in, Jacob Young's look obviously warmed up. Not disturbing. She'll be leaving soon. I let out a kind smile and turned to leave. Inside the office, two people's voices rang out. Girlfriend bringing you food? Jacob Young didn't say anything but acquiesced as Sophia Zhou opened the insulated food container. Clam chowder? Sophia Zhou raised an eyebrow, a hint of smugness and merriment flashing in her eyes. It just so happens that I haven't eaten either. Do you mind if I join you? Jacob Young didn't respond, just walked over to the door, gave me a sullen look, and closed the door. I went home alone. By the time I reached home, the night was deep and the large house was dead silent. I was standing by the window when my cell phone suddenly rang. It was my mom's birthday wishes that she had recorded for me in advance. Yen Yen. Today is your 27th birthday. Mom wishes you a happy birthday. Counting the days you and Xiao Jiang have been in love for 3 years. Have you gotten married? Are you happy? Mom is not here. Remember to always love yourself. Mom's warm voice echoed in the empty, silent room. And I reached up to press it off. My nose sore. Jacob Young and I met on a blind date. At that time, my mom was nearing the end of her cancer and had always regretted not being able to see me start a family. I didn't really have much of a relationship in mind. I just wanted to make my mom happy and cope with it. When I met Jacob Young, his cool and self-possessed demeanor convinced me that this was an act that both parties were forced to do. But to my surprise, after the meeting, Jacob Young suddenly started to pursue me passionately. Knowing that my mother was sick, he introduced me to a good doctor, helped me decipher the unintelligible laboratory tests, and taught me how to relieve her pain through massage. Those long nights soaked and deformed by sterilized water gradually became hopeful even in his company. In Mom's last dying moments, he confessed to me, promising to be good to me for the rest of my life. I cried and nodded my head, in tears. but also ignored the flat silence of the bottom of his eyes, as if in the completion of some kind of task. Not long after falling in love, he suddenly began to stay out at night. Cold. That's when I realized Sophia Jo existed. It was then that I realized Sophia Jo existed. Because Sophia Jo, who was far away in the overseas, got in touch with him again. That night he had a rare insomnia, leaning against the balcony railing, his fingertips scarlet and bright red. Then he sent a friend circle that only Sophia Jo could see. I'm a tough talker, but I never said I didn't want to wait for you. Jacob Young came home in the middle of the night with a damp chill. The bedroom door was ajar, and I closed my eyes slightly, pretending to be asleep. He didn't remember my birthday, only pulling off his tie and tossing it casually on the floor while propping up his cell phone to talk to a friend. Tell me about you. You and Shiyuan were so in love that you had to break up. Now she's back, and you're about to start a family, he said. She's obviously coming back for you this time. What do you want to do? He leaned on the sofa. The silhouette of his side face was rendered extraordinarily cold by the weak light. There was a long silence before he spoke slowly. I don't want to trap her in a marriage too soon. She's a free spirit. She should see the world and decide for herself where to land. As for Jane Young, my breath hitched. She's considerate and caring. My parents always wanted me to start a family, and I went on a blind date and found the daughter-in-law they were looking for. I'm already engaged to her. The rest of my life is just to marry her and have children. I will continue to play out this drama. His voice was so calm that no emotion existed. At the bottom of my heart, something completely collapsed. In the past, I used to deduce from every little thing, looking for evidence that he loved me, even if he never remembered my birthday, even if he never waited for me while walking, even if he rarely cared about what I thought or felt. But I would always think of his solid, reliable shoulder when I was at my worst, of the lingering warmth of his fingers brushing the corners of my eyes, of his unstructured kisses on the night of our engagement, and would always find reasons and excuses for him. Until now the surge of love has faded. I have to admit that the so-called love in his case, just barely for the drama and performance. He never really loved me. In this relationship, he is easy, in and out of the degree. I have been avoiding it, covering my ears and pretending to be happy. That night, I had a fever and didn't sleep well. When I woke up in the morning, my side was empty. Jacob Young in the foyer tied his tie. Indifferent. The faded engagement ring was left in the corner, glowing with cold light. I suddenly remembered that he hadn't worn his engagement ring for a few days. Once upon a time, he would still wear a pair of rings to coax me. But from the day Sophia Jo came back, the ring on his ring finger disappeared, leaving only a fading ring mark. Love or no love, it's too obvious. Jacob Young glanced back and saw me standing on the stairs, ghostly. He came over to me and reached out to touch my hair. His movements were very gentle. There was a moment of affection. But the moment the message popped up on my cell phone, it quickly returned to indifference. It was a message from Sophia Jo. I'm off to work. Until the sound of a car roaring in the yard came. I suddenly came back to my senses. Suddenly I was a little tired. After 3 years of being in love, the deliberate pretense of intimacy and affection before leaving the house is played out on a daily basis. But I never really felt the sweetness. It was more like an appeasement of the partner. During these 3 years, Jacob Young wasn't too bad to me. After we got engaged, He took the initiative to give me his paycheck card and let me swipe it. He also took care of all the household chores without me having to worry about them. I casually say what I want. He will agree. Rarely vetoed. Everything seems to be fine. But there's just one thing wrong. Too polite and distant. So polite and distant that he has no real feelings for me. It's all a cop-out. Between him and Sophia Zhou, there is a past that I can never be a part of. A gap that I can never cross. If you don't love, why hold on? Perhaps it is easier to let go than to have. Autumn rain is continuous, with the coldness of depression. Since I started working in the morning, my abdomen has been vaguely painful. Until now, I stood next to the printer, gradually unable to straighten up. When I was about to lose consciousness, I had to call Jacob Young, but several times in a row. No one answered the phone. It wasn't until my coworkers called 120 for me and helped me to the ambulance that my cell phone ding-donged. It was a message from Jacob Young. In a meeting, the message was short. As usual, no unnecessary concern or greeting. Seemed really busy. The hospital. The overhead light swept past the corner of my eye. The sweat on my back soaked the blue cloth on the stretcher. And I opened my eyes weakly, with just a quick glance. I recognized Jacob Young. He was explaining a surgical case to Sophia Zhou in a gentle, attentive voice. The two of them are very close to each other, and Sophia Zhou is leaning intimately against his chest. So this is the meeting he was talking about. When the wheel rolled and the stretcher almost hit Sophia Zhou, he naturally took her gently into his arms and hugged her, until the corner of his white lab coat brushed against my drooping arm. He subconsciously looked back. Shock crossed the bottom of his eyes, and the knot in his throat rolled. I gently laughed and closed my eyes, no longer looking at him. When I was awake again, I was already in the hospital room. Jacob Young was dressed in a white lab coat, tall, standing at the end of the bed with his back to me. Noticing that I woke up, he came over and pinched his brow, and opened his mouth with an accusation. What's going on? You didn't even tell me about the appendicitis attack? Perhaps seeing my pale face, his tone eased a bit. Do you know that it's serious enough to kill someone? I didn't look at him. I just stared at the ceiling silently. You're in a meeting with Sophia Zhou. Inside the room, Jacob Young stiffened for a second, then put his hands in his pockets and grimaced. Shiyuan and I aren't on the same page anymore. We won't be. Between his brows was an overwhelming dislike and impatience. Jane Young. It's really quite tiresome to be unreasonable more often than not. For days on end, Jacob Young was nowhere to be seen. A few days later, Sophia Zhou came to help me with my checkup. She was holding a medical record book and her rose gold watch jingled on her wrist. It was a couple's watch of the same model as Jacob Young. A mess. Jiang is recovering well and will be discharged soon. She lowered her eyes to record the values. The tip of her pen made a rustling sound on the paper. Last night's party. By and by, he drank too much. And I was the one who sent him back. What a shame. I'm the one who reminded him of his impromptu meeting this morning. My hands froze as I looked up the movers and quietly raised my eyes to gaze at her. You're happy with Jacob Young, aren't you? She closed her clinic book with a snap and the corners of her lips lifted in a subtle curve. After all, when we were together, he was clingy and loving. Back then, when I casually said I wanted to eat a Netflix cake, he would queue up all night to buy it for me. If I had a headache or fever, He was so worried that he wanted to take me to the hospital right away. Even when driving, he has to hold my hand. Don't you think it's funny? Yes, it is. Jacob Young gave the best to Sophia Jo. He feels sorry for Sophia Jo when she has to squeeze into the subway, complains that she doesn't eat on time, and thinks of taking her on a trip when he sees a beautiful place. But to me, there is only endless perfunctory and cold. Sophia Jo got up and gave me a slight smile, full of arrogance and complacency. When a man gives away all his love, he doesn't love people anymore. There's no way around it. In love, it's all about first come first served. A mess. Jong, please take care of yourself. It was raining on the day I was discharged from the hospital. Jacob Young came to pick me up. The car was parked at the surface parking lot, and he stood under the eaves with an umbrella waiting for me. As he approached, he reached out to take the bag in my hand, but I dodged and refused. He looked stunned for a moment. His thin lips pursed into a straight line. The knot in his throat rolled several times before he finally spoke. A few days ago, the province suddenly drew a group of experts. I was not in the hospital. The umbrella suddenly tilted, and the rain curtain cut out gloom between his eyebrows. I let out a faint wrapped my coat around me, and didn't ask about that night when he was drunk and Sophia Jo sent him home. He didn't want to talk about it, so I didn't want to find out anymore. Seeing my silence, the back of Jacob Young's hand gripping the umbrella handle bulged with veins. Do you have to make a scene now? I didn't bother him. I just felt tired. Let's go. Jacob Young's steps were as fast as ever, brisk as usual, not caring about the strain I was putting on my heels. I could not keep up with his pace, and the rain soon dampened my shirt, chilling my bones. Jacob Young still didn't notice my mess, and his steps became faster and faster. I suddenly remembered that day when he was walking with Sophia Jo, the pace he deliberately slowed down for her. Step after step, smashed into my heart. A dull ache came from my ankle as my high heel got stuck in the drain grate. I struggled to bend over, but glimpsed that a few dozen meters away, Jacob Young had arrived at the car and was looking down to straighten his cuffs. The moment he raised his eyes, he nodded his wristwatch at me through the curtain of rain. Hurry up. I have an operation this afternoon. And those feet, wrapped in Ferragamo loafers, remained nailed to the ground a few steps away from me. At the bottom of my heart, I heard a very soft cracking sound, a floor of scattered flesh and blood, never to be put together again. He would never wait for me, never even look back. My eyes had embraced his back countless times long ago, then chased after him alone after a fall. And this time, I didn't take the initiative to follow. I stood still and watched him steadily, watching Jacob Young's face go from flat and silent, to wrinkled eyebrows and doubt, to a familiar impatience. Jacob Young. That's it. Let's break up. Once I heard a saying, when you don't know if you should continue the relationship, just look at each other, because eyes don't lie. In the short time that Jacob Young and I looked at each other, his eyes looked like a dead lake, without a single ripple. But I could clearly see the sparkling light in his eyes when he looked at Sophia Jo, and I could see the love in his eyes. That kind of love can't be hidden. So when he left me where I was again, looking at me with a confused face, I really didn't have the slightest thought of continuing on. And this time, Jacob Young finally knew to walk back toward me. His steps were hurried, and the shadows blocked out all my light as he stood in front of me. Jane Young. What do you mean by that? What are you messing with again? I drove all night in a rainstorm to get back here to pick you up from the hospital. I was really tired from the afternoon meetings. Maybe I seldom fight with Jacob Young, but he was so angry with me. What the hell am I doing? I raised my rain-soaked sleeve. Jacob Young. In 3 years together. Did you ever really love me? You never remember my favorites. I hate cilantro, but every meal I had with you was covered in cilantro. Just because Sophia Jo loved it. You won't remember my birthday either. Every birthday in the past 3 years. I've spent it alone. And you didn't even say a single word of blessing. But you would send your blessings on Sophia Jo's birthday every year. Stuck at 0 hour. You don't care about my feelings. You never waited for me when walking with you. It was always me stumbling to catch up with you. And even today, when ID just had surgery and it was still raining, you wouldn't look back at me through the curtain of rain. His always cool and self-possessed complexion finally rippled. He held the umbrella and was silent for a long time. Jacob Young. You clearly love Sophia Jo. So why do you insist on marrying me? What? Are you going to marry me who you don't love, and then spend your whole life missing the person you love? I'm telling you. Jacob Young. It's really quite disgusting. Who's going to be a tool for you to mourn your ex? Jacob Young looked at me as if he hadn't expected me to say such a thing. The umbrella tilted for a moment. The scales in his heart seemed to be finally tilted in my favor. After a long period of silence, he slowly spoke. Jane Young, you are angry for a moment. I won't take today's words to heart. I'll wait for your anger to subside. That night, I didn't go home. When my girlfriend Zoe found me, I was eating at a hot and spicy food stall on the side of the road. Jacob Young would never eat with me at this kind of roadside stall. He says he's a germaphobe and thinks these places are dirty. So, in the 3 years I've been with him, I've rarely touched them. It wasn't until Sophia Jo bragged in front of me that when they were in love, Jacob Young peeled crayfish for her and ate all the snacks in the university town with her. I realized that there was no such thing as cleanliness. It's just that his favorites and exceptions were never given to me. Zoe sat across from me and looked at me with a mixture of confusion and shock. You broke up with Jacob Young? Have you really thought this through? I don't blame her for this attitude. After all, when Jacob Young appeared in my world and took care of my mom with me, I was really both grateful and in love with him. At that time, I was in the uneasiness of the impending loss of my closest relative and desperately wanted to grab someone to rely on. So much so that later on, he completely captured me with just a little bit of love leaking out of the cracks of his hands. I took a sip of my soda, looked at Zoe, and said seriously, yes, I broke up with him. Jane Young, you really don't love him anymore? Won't regret it? I nodded solemnly. There was a time when I loved him. The dazzle at the first sight and the companionship at the hardest time supported me in my lonely chase these years. I tried so hard, but with Sophia Jo around, I could never enter his world or see through his heart. Even when he was closest to me, he hugged me. But the dark pupils were more compromised and lonely. For this reason, I was in constant internal conflict. I began to quietly compare myself to Sophia Jo, and began to secretly compete with them. As a result, only to get a full of scars of my own. So I gave up. Jacob Young is too cold in nature. He can't love people at all. Ginger, you're the one who's aggrieved by being with him. Zoe raised her soda and clinked glasses with me. Let's congratulate my beautiful MS Ginger for finally ending her 3-year-long relationship. This is the day. This is the moment. to finally let go. Her eyes lit up. I smiled and clinked glasses with her. The bubbles exploded in my mouth. I was suddenly relieved. Life is too short to be obsessed with things that don't belong to me. Hey race to the past that will never come back. And hey race to a free tomorrow. On the way back, the rain started unexpectedly. The cell phone rang with a ding-dong sound. It was a message from Jacob Young. It's 10:00 p.m. When are you coming home? Jacob Young still thinks I'm losing my temper. As if my breakup declaration today doesn't count at all. After all, in his mind, he didn't do anything wrong. It's just carelessness and lack of daily care. It's not just that I had a little work connection with my first love. It wasn't that I was angry for a moment and would be fine if I calmed down. He never took my aggravation seriously. He just thought I was being unreasonable. I ignored him and quickly crossed out the message. A few minutes later, he called again. When I didn't answer, he called every few minutes. Suddenly, I wanted to laugh a little. Jacob Young has always been calm and self-possessed, and what happened to me rarely left ripples in his heart. But at this moment, he was actually persistent in calling me for nearly 10 times. When the last call came, I answered it. The first thing he said was, "Where are you?" The tone of his voice was a bit anxious, and he seemed to be very worried about me. Hearing no reply from my side, he seemed to react and resumed his usual accusations. "Jane Young, are you drunk again? I won't pick you up if you're drunk as a puddle this time." When I first learned of Sophia Zhou's existence, I had a big fight with him, broke up with him in anger, and then got drunk in a bar. But at that time, I was young, and I was reluctant to do anything about it. Finally, I called Jacob Young and asked him to pick me up. I clearly remember that day when he came to pick me up. He looked calm and indifferent, but there was a dark blue color under his eyes. I didn't go home, and he was late to bed, waiting until 12 o'clock. I was drunk and collapsed on top of him when I called his name in tears. A very, very soft, "I'm sorry," drifted in the wind from him. As the cold wind poured into my mouth and nose, I let out a long breath and said to Jacob Young on the other end of the phone, "Jacob Young, I've already broken up with you today. I'm not going back. In a couple days, a moving company will come and take my belongings." On the other end of the phone, there was a long silence. "Jane Young, are you serious?" "Of course. I'm serious." I hung up, hacked his number, wrapped my scarf tightly around me, and hid in the wind and snow. I rented a new apartment, a one-bedroom apartment. Not as luxurious as Jacob Young's big flat, but enough for me to live on my own. After the breakup, my time was suddenly abundant. Once upon a time, I always had to learn all kinds of baking after work to please Jiang mother. Now, on the other hand, I had time to do what I loved or to party with friends. Jacob Young's mother is a traditional and conservative housewife. She agreed to let me in because she also saw how well I took care of my mom when she was sick, and thought I was well-behaved and in control. When we first met, her words were that I should return to my family after marriage and have good homemaker duties. That's why I have to get up early and accompany Jacob Young to drive 2 hours to the countryside to see his parents every couple of days off. Listening to his traditional and conservative parents give one lecture after another. Listening to his mother scold Sophia Zhou for her unreliability in flying all over the world and not staying at home. In fact, I don't like it very much. But because of Jacob Young, I haven't resisted. Good thing I'm free now. Physically and mentally free. No one can decide whether I should stay home after work or have dinner with friends. And no one can pull my heartstrings and make me sad. This Sunday, I slept in for the first time and didn't wake up until 10 a.m. Instead, the moving company called. A mess. Jiang. Mr. Jiang said he needs you to come here in person before he'll open the door and let us in. On the other end of the phone, Jacob Young's cold voice rang out. Jane Young. Even if you want to move out, at least be there in person to pack up. Otherwise, I won't let strangers into my home. When I arrived at Jacob Young's house, Jacob Young was leaning in front of the door, in a standoff with the moving company. When he saw me appear, his eyes lingered on me for a few seconds. Only then did he shake his head lightly. Mocking. Jane Young. What have I done to you in these 3 years to make you pull the plug on me so quickly? Now that I'm looking for you, I have to ask someone else to get on the phone with you. After 3 years of living under the same roof, Jacob Young was still so arrogant. He's cold and detached, like a passerby in a shared life. Even now, he still won't lower his high head. Jacob Young, if that's all you have to say to me, then we really don't have to talk. I skipped right past him and stepped inside, signaling the movers to come in. Jacob Young pursed his lips and didn't speak again, but his eyes followed me throughout. He watched as I directed the movers to move things around. Several times, wanting to say something. His expression was torn. The clothes in the closet went from bright and colorful to just black, white and gray. The pots and pans ID added to the kitchen disappeared from the countertop one by one. It wasn't until I started tearing down the wall of photos hanging on the wall that Jacob Young finally sat down. He stood up in front of me and blocked me. A little oppressive because of his height. Jane Young, what are you doing? I'm in these pictures too. I don't want you to take them away. Most of these photos were taken on important days. I was smiling and always subconsciously leaning towards Jacob Young. Jacob Young, on the other hand, was mostly just a cold sideways face, with a bit of resistance. In 3 years, I can't remember how many cold stares I endured from him. When I think of those aggravating days, I have a kind of shadow of fear, and I don't want to see it at all anymore. Jacob Young was right. He was in the picture, too, and I really shouldn't have taken it away. So, in front of him, I tore down the half that had me in it, one after the other. All over the floor, I took only myself. Jacob Young froze. He clutched my wrist violently, his voice tightening. Jane Young, eyes crimson. I jerked my wrist out hard and gave a sarcastic smile. Jacob Young, you've never appreciated your time with me, so why get upset over these pictures? The floor was a bit of a mess when I finished cleaning up. Jacob Young frowned tightly, his face ugly. It's okay though. I've taken everything of value. I haven't left any of the gold and jade bracelets he bought me. I've traded the best of my youth for the deepest lessons. Money and love. I always have to have one. Before leaving, I put the house key on the table gently. Along with it, I left the engagement ring. Jacob Young didn't come back to see me after our last move. The news that we broke up and retired soon spread through my circle of friends. Everyone who heard the news was sorry. After all, Jacob Young and I had been in a relationship for 3 years, and we had already gotten engaged, and were just one step away from getting married. On the contrary, Sophia Jo, on the first day after we broke up, posted a circle of friends. What belongs to me, you can never take away. B. When a mutual acquaintance told me, I only thought she was funny. My friend was a little anxious. You've spent 3 years of your youth for nothing. All the hard work you've put in has gone to waste. Aren't you afraid you'll regret it later? I shook my head. The 3 years I spent with Jacob Young had been a time of internal conflict. I was like being on a boat that was about to sink. Precarious. But the boat was sinking. So I might as well quit early and stop the damage. I've managed to stay away from toxic relationships. You should be happy for me. After all, you can't carry around garbage all the time. Can you? I said to my friend. My friend smiled awkwardly. I later realized that he was a lobbyist sent by Jacob Young. My words reached Jacob Young's ears word for word. That day, the paper under his pen was tightly clenched into a ball. But soon, he looked out the window with a certainty. No, she'll be back. She's simply not capable of living on her own. She can't live without me. Unfortunately, Jacob Young was wrong. When I first got together with Jacob Young, it was partly because I couldn't stand the loneliness of living alone. I grew up with my mom, who was my only support. When my mom passed away suddenly, I lost all support in my life. I was alone at home for a long time and sulked. Turned the TV on and let the sound fill the room. The house was too quiet for me, and the loneliness was too loud to bear. I began to panic and grab at people near me, including Jacob Young. It seems that being alone for a long time makes you slide into love. I looked forward to love to fill my emotional void. I looked forward to finding a support, a dependence on him. But the truth is, the loneliness I felt when I was with Jacob Young was greater than I had ever felt on my own, because I got more disappointment in the relationship. Today, I'm starting to re-examine life alone, began to recognize the importance of being on my own, began to accept that loneliness is an undercurrent of life that cannot be dissipated. Without the bondage of marriage, the shackles of the Jiang family's daughter-in-law, all the possibilities of my life were released. I quit my job as an administrative assistant at the Jiang Group, taking my dusty certificate for a long time to re-find a professional counterpart of the company. When I first came here, there were a lot of things I needed to know from the beginning, and I had to put all my energy into it. Meetings, overtime work, business trips, and so on. But I don't feel tired, because after the hard work is visible more and more generous bonuses, is another kind of spiritual pleasure. Half a month later, I left the Jiang family business was Jacob Young knew. I had just come home from work that day, and he was sitting in front of my house waiting for me. I had worked overtime until 10 o'clock, and he had waited for a long time. It was early winter, and he was wearing a camel-colored cashmere coat, which looked a bit thin and fragile under the light. When he saw me, he got up and staggered to me. "Why did you quit?" He glanced at my humble house and frowned. "Is the company not paying you enough to live on?" "I can ask Father to double it. It has nothing to do with that." I opened the door and stopped him as he tried to enter. "Jacob Young, we're not together anymore. It's not convenient to entertain you here." Jacob Young let out a small laugh. "Do you hate me so much that you would rather stay in this palm-sized place and make your own fire to cook than go back with me? This place may not be worse than the Jiang family." I sneered at him. In the Jiang family, not only do I have to look at Jacob Young's eyes and be treated with cold violence by him, I also had to give everything to the family and sacrifice myself as demanded by Jiang's mother. Jacob Young is a proud and smart man. He understands my words. His face turned iron blue, and without another word, he turned and left. That night, I received a strange text message. It was from Sophia Zhou. The photo showed Jacob Young drunkenly askew in the leather back seat of a car. The light was hitting the man's well-defined face from top to bottom, and the collar was unbuttoned a few times. There were also a few telltale lipstick marks on his lips. I don't know why he's so sad today, but it's okay. Tonight, we're ultra-thin and zero distance apart. I let out a light laugh. Thank you for going to so much trouble to pick up the trash I don't want, and for cheating so blatantly. Aren't you afraid that your boyfriend, who is far away and overseas, knows about it? Sophia Jo called almost instantly, raising her voice. Jane Young, what do you want? At this moment, Sophia Jo was panicking. The smirk on my face is obvious as I pull up a message from my best friend Zoe on my computer. On the left is Sophia Jo kissing her mentor, who is over 40 years old with a wife and son, at Charles River Banks. On the right is the paper she published just before returning home. The data too perfect to be true. I don't think Jacob Young would have guessed that the superficially glamorous Dr. Jo loved being someone's mistress at home and abroad. Sophia Jo's life history is nothing short of spectacular. When she was in college, she fell in love with Jacob Young and never stopped wearing luxury goods. But when she graduated, she left him for her future. When she was abroad, she fell in love with her tutor, who was over 40 years old. Hard to bite the bullet in the naysayers. Access to a lot of academic resources. The road to apply for a doctoral degree is incredibly smooth. But monstrous love is wonderful. When the old man's lover for a long time, Sophia Jo will also be tired. So, she asked for connections to return to China and parachute into a well-known tertiary hospital. That is, Jacob Young's hospital. And she starts to get entangled with Jacob Young again. You think Jacob Young cares? Her voice was suddenly sharp. I was the one who didn't want him 6 years ago. I paused deliberately. Do you think he would find it more unbearable to be cheated than abandoned? A mess. Jo, you like collecting scraps so much. I'll make you whole. But if you shamelessly come to disturb my life again, I can't guarantee that these photos won't appear in your hospital's mailbox. After that warning, Sophia Jo never came to me to provoke me again. Maybe she was afraid. Maybe she was weak. But I didn't take such an episode to heart. After bringing good benefits to the company valued me more and began to bring me to participate in some important projects. Late that night, the wine table gaggle. After the end, I sent the last client to the car with my fellow seniors. After the dust settled, I was left alone in the night breeze, and a handful of delicate red roses in my hand. I rubbed my sore ankles and turned around, ready to go home. A familiar Audi R8 came from not far away and stopped in front of me. The window came down, revealing a man's elegant and noble face. It was Jacob Young. His eyes fell straight onto the bouquet in my hand. He froze for a few moments before speaking, his voice laced with ice. Who's it from? I smiled. Nothing to do with you. Jacob Young looked at me steadily, his eyes becoming thick and playful. Jane Young, is that why you keep refusing to come back? Don't you think I deserve an explanation? It's only been a month since we broke up. I was angry and amused. What's wrong with you? Not everyone is like you. Getting tangled up with your ex again while you're with your lover. Jacob Young coldly unbuckled his seatbelt and walked over to me, grabbing my wrist, tightening his brow. Jane Young. Sophia Jo and I never crossed the line. We didn't have any sex after we broke up, and I didn't cheat on her. I always treated you as my fiancé. I crowed. Not a moment too soon? Jacob Young, Do you take me for a fool? Was your intimacy in the hospital not enough? Or the fact that you were with Sophia Zhou on both drunken occasions not strong enough evidence? In the 3 years we've been together, there's been no care and love, only businesslike indifference. And now you're pretending to treat me as your fiancé. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Jacob Young froze. His eyes dimmed. Finally, he softened his tone. Sophia Zhou doesn't mean anything to me emotionally. I don't like her anymore. And I don't have any intention of breaking up the relationship. But anyway, I hurt you. I can't deny that. And I apologize. His eyes darkened slightly. The first time he seriously apologized to me. He looked a little lopsided as he bowed his head at me. As for you saying that I didn't care for you lovingly, it's my fault that I didn't remember your birthday or your preferences. It's also my fault that I didn't know to wait for you when I was walking. But Jane Young, before, I didn't know how to love people and I let you down. Now I know. And I understand how to love you. Jane Young, will you come back? That home can't be without you. We have obviously lived together for 3 years. How can you let go? He clasped my shoulders and looked at me humbly. His eyes red. This was the first time I saw Jacob Young cry. So proud of himself. For the first time. His face was all disheveled. He even buttoned up his shirt the wrong way. For Jacob Young, it was a huge mistake. It's ironic. When I was with him, pleasing him in every way, he looked on coldly and ignored me. Now that I'm gone, he regrets it. For nothing. I pushed him away hard. Jacob Young, it took a lot of effort for me to move forward. I'm not turning back. Since then, I haven't seen Jacob Young for quite some time. I only heard from friends that he was depressed. He often smelled of alcohol when he went to work. When he was off work, he couldn't call out, and always stayed home alone. Jane Young, after you broke up, you couldn't get over it. He still has feelings for you. He cares about you. I found it funny. Those who have a clear conscience in a relationship will definitely come out quickly after a breakup. Only those who owe others in a relationship will regret it the more they think about it, and the more they can't walk out after a breakup. This is not deep love. This is scum. As for what they say about caring, maybe it only exists in the empty words coming out of Jacob Young's mouth. If he really cared, how could he have never cared about my low mood and let me be overwhelmed by my grievances? How could he let me trot behind him and let him walk in front of him? And how could he not realize if I was tired? If my shoes were worn out? If I could not keep up? However, before Jacob Young had time to be depressed, Sophia Zhou having an affair with her married professor came to light. On the same day, Sophia Zhou's affair with Jacob Young in China while she was a mistress of her tutor abroad, and her involvement in other people's relationships, made it to the hot search engines. In just 2 hours, the whole network was hot. Today she is the man's mistress. Tomorrow she will run away to someone else's nest. This woman loves to be a mistress? All of them are scumbags. Since having an affair with her married professor must be shameless, she must be used to thick words. The male doctor is also a bitch. He doesn't know what he's talking about. For a while, Sophia Zhou and Jacob Young were in the limelight. After the farce, the cheating tutor was revoked and no longer employed. Sophia Zhou was investigated by the school. Her degree was cancelled. Her internship contract was terminated. And she was expelled from the hospital. And Jacob Young was disgraced by the public and had to leave his job. After the storm, my best friend Zoe came to me and asked, Did you do it? Yes. I shook my head. Ginger. You're still too soft, she said. She was a bit indignant. These two people are such a pain in the ass. Especially Sophia Joe, who seduced a man and provoked you to your face. And you leave them no way out. I gently laughed, although I didn't lead public opinion to cyber violence. But I sent all the photos of Sophia Joe and her tutor to the tutor's wife. She has the right to know the truth. Gentleness is my color, but sharpness is my attitude. I knew early on that my strength alone would not be enough to make any waves. After all, I've been an administrative assistant in the Jiang family for 3 years, and I have no relatives. I could have just sent out the news and been suppressed by the Jiang family. And that tutor's wife is different. She has a strong family background, and she herself is an academic big shot, with rich connections and resources. In the face of her husband's cheating, never be merciful. Half a year later, I rely on excellent workability, successfully promoted to manager, will be transferred out of the city. The day I left, the sky was clear. Jacob Young, whom I hadn't seen for a long time, suddenly appeared at my door. After half a year, he was much more haggard. What are you doing here? His eyes fell on the suitcase in my hand, and his bitter smile reached the bottom of his eyes. I know you're leaving, so I came to see you off. He stretched out his hand and was about to take the suitcase in my hand. I politely took half a step back. Imperfectly fine on my own, Jacob Young couldn't hide the disappointment on his face. He stepped to my side again and walked alongside me. Like a long time ago. Only this time, he finally remembered to slow down, as if he was deliberately waiting for me. But this time, I picked up my pace and walked in front of him, leaving him staring blankly behind me. I turned around and waved my hand at him. I'll leave it here. Nowadays, I am no longer obsessed with being loved, no longer relying on others to alleviate my loneliness, and no longer afraid of losing. I don't care if he's waiting for me, and I don't need a man to slow down his pace for me. I'm not sure if it's a good idea, but I'm sure it's a good idea for me to get a good idea of what I'm doing, he said.